Iceland, known as the land of fire and ice. The country is completely isolated on a volcanic island in the mid-Atlantic, with a population of just over 300,000 people. Up until the 1970s, Iceland was classified by the United Nations as a developing country, a nation still dominated by fishing and sheep farming, having for centuries been amongst the poorest in Europe. The energy at the time was primarily fossil fuel, imported oil, and coal. In the 21st century, sustainable development has become an essential issue for humankind. Before the Industrial Revolution, the world was nearly equal in its poverty. Following the revolution changed human history and human destiny, but increased huge gaps between the rich and the poor. Iceland's journey from poverty to economic growth and well-being was mostly fueled by harnessing the country's own renewable energy resources. Today, geothermal energy and hydropower account for more than 90% of the island's primary energy consumption. Icelanders place a great importance on maintaining a pristine environment, not only for their own sake, but for the fact that Iceland's natural environment is the main attraction for foreign tourists. In 2002, Iceland announced a national strategy for sustainable development called Welfare for the Future. The term welfare refers to economic aspects and also to a wider definition of the quality of life, including social and environmental factors. The strategy has its centerpiece as the achievement of environmental sustainability. The policy was designed to carry Iceland forward to the year 2020, following a philosophy of environmental sustainability. The initiative is being supported by a strong program of environmental education in Iceland schools to make children more aware of the short-term and long-term effects. The core of the national strategy is a set of 17 goals which can be broken down into 4 categories, each of which relates to several key sectors of Iceland's economy. These 4 categories include health and safe environment, protection of Icelandic nature, sustainable use of resources, and global issues. Let's take a look at the first category, healthy and safe environment. Goal 1, clean air. In general, Iceland's air is cleaner than most economically developed countries. However, people in Iceland do regard air pollution in the capital of Reykjavik as a problem. The national strategy has targets to achieve the goal of cleaner air by monitoring air pollution more closely and providing better information to the public, as well as promoting cleaner fuels and the use of public transportation. Goal 2. Clean fresh water. Iceland is fortunate in that its fresh water is generally the purest in Europe, but much of their water is untreated groundwater. This strategy will introduce legislation to protect water of aquatic ecosystems, improve the monitoring of the quality of fresh water and drinking water, and ensure that all drinking water measures up to the required health standards. Goal 3. Safe food products. The national strategy is seeking to improve the dietary information provided. By conducting regular checks for pollutants, additives, and pathogens in food, limit the use of drugs and pesticides in food production, provide better nutritional information to consumers, and control the environmental pollutions near places where food is produced. Goal 4. Chemicals. The national strategy also has targets to achieve an environment free from hazardous materials. By starting compulsory registration of hazardous materials, whether they are produced domestically or whether they are imported. Decrease the use of biocides and pesticides, as well as develop an action plan to limit the disposal of hazardous materials. Goal 5. Outdoor activities. The national strategy wants to encourage outdoor activities that are in harmony with nature. By conducting research to determine the carrying capacity of tourist sites, allows for improvement of the condition of tourist sites, such as clearing paths, making parking spaces, and improving access, providing better information to tourists in addition to getting tourists to cover the cost of monitoring and developing tourist sites. Goal 6. Natural disasters. The final goal for this category has targets to achieve protection against natural disasters by designing structures to withstand pressures from storms, earthquakes, and other natural threats, improving monitoring systems of natural hazards, as well as people's preparedness to respond to dangers. I had the special opportunity to interview Rega, who has been with Iceland's search and rescue team for over 8 years now. She is the head of the core unit of her team, as well as a special search unit. I had asked her what was the correlation with the number of responses in relation to climate change. Would you say that there's a correlation between climate change and the number of incidents that you respond to each year?
Yes, I would say so. Like on the glaciers and the rivers, the glaciers are more open, the more crevasses in the glacier, and so more accidents are happening on the glacier, so people are falling in a crevasse zone.
When she's not devoting her free time to search and rescue, Rega works on this glacier here. I had asked her off camera, has she noticed a significant difference in the size of the glacier, and she has assured me that it has significantly decreased since she started working there, but was afraid to say it on camera. Moving along to Category 2, Protection of Icelandic Nature. Goal 7, Iceland's animal and plant life. This goal has targets to achieve the protection of Iceland's biota, mapping Iceland's biota and possible threats to use as basis for regular monitoring, protecting key habitats such as the wetlands and the birch woodlands, reclaiming the wetlands that have been damaged, and ensuring that hunting and fishing in rivers and lakes is conducted on a sustainable basis. Goal 8. Geological Formations. The national strategy has set out to protect Iceland's unique geological structures by systematically surveying geological formations to produce a better geological map, preserving geological formations wherever possible, and reducing the number of mines and seal mines that are currently open. Goal 9. Wilderness Area. The national strategy has targets to achieve the goal of conserving Iceland's wilderness areas by monitoring industrial projects on an annual basis, limiting human structures and projects in these wilderness areas, conserving continuous wilderness areas, which would include establishing new national parks and closing roads and banning traffic in some areas. The third category is sustainable use of resources. Goal 10. Living marine resources. Iceland's national strategy has targets to achieve the sustainable use of living marine resources by establishing a legal framework to manage Iceland's fishing industry, adopting an ecosystem approach to the management of the marine environments, and taking greater account of the environmental impact of fishing gear. Goal 11. Soil. To achieve sustainable use of vegetation and reclamation of land, Iceland has plans of improving vegetation by making sustainable grazing lands, creating government support for farmers, developing a long-term strategy for soil conservation, and increasing afforestation projects. Goal 12. Renewable energy. Iceland targets to increase the utilization of renewable energy by continuing to build a master plan for use of renewable energy, conducting research for even better resources, testing vehicles that use renewable sources, improving efficiency of existing power sources, and educating the public to have them actually utilize this technology. During my recent visit to Iceland, I was fortunate enough to take a tour provided by On Power, Iceland's largest geothermal power plant. Here's a short description on how this plant generates power for almost the entire country.
Okay, so in Iceland, the electricity used is actually 70% hydropower and then 30% geothermal. But 90% of houses in Iceland are being heated up using geothermal energy. So the two major energy sources in Iceland are geothermal and then hydropower. We also have 2 windmills in Iceland in total. The thing is with the windmills is we haven't used them as much as the geothermal and hydropower because the wind is actually too strong in Iceland. So the windmills tend to break. But we use the geothermal energy a lot because our magma chambers here in Iceland are relatively shallow, so we don't have to drill that deep into the bedrock to be able to harness the heat of these magma chambers. And we also have a lot of water to be a medium for this energy, and we also have this permeable bedrock to be able to transport the energy from 5 kilometers to the surface.
Moving on to the final category of global issues. Goal 13. Waste. The national strategy has targets for reduction and improved handling of waste. By making the polluters to pay for their waste while the government pays for recycling costs. Developing a waste management plan in addition to setting recycling goals and standards. Improvement of handling construction waste since it is one of the biggest contributors to overall waste production, as well as utilizing and researching better waste handling technologies. Goal 14. Clean ocean. Iceland has set out to ensure that the concentration of pollutants always pulls below the strictest internationally. By participating in international groups to stop the release of persistent organic pollutants, also known as POPs, and heavy metals. Creating an action plan to stop land-based marine pollution, stopping radioactive pollution in the North Atlantic produced by other countries, improving waste management on ships, creating laws to combat waste in the oceans, and lastly, taking all of the above actions to an international level. Goal 15. Climate change. The national strategy has targets to limit climate change by creating taxes against cars with poor mileage, which would in turn encourage the use of fuel-efficient cars, reducing waste by the aluminum industry, reducing the footprint from the fishing fleet by increased technology in refrigeration systems, reducing disposal of gas-producing waste, creation of more carbon sinks by revegetating the country, and continuing international efforts in sustainability to fight climate change. Goal 16. Ozone Layer. Iceland targets to protect the ozone layer with a complete ban on the import of ozone-depleting chemicals, removal of ozone-depleting substances from older equipment, together with safe recycling of old air conditioners, fire extinguishers, and broken refrigerators. Goal 17. Biological diversity. Iceland's national strategy has targets to achieve the protection of biodiversity. A comprehensive national strategy on conserving biodiversity will be developed and implemented with regulations that will be introduced to restrict the importation of invasive animal species and their breeding within Iceland, as well as limit the importation and distribution of genetically modified organisms, also known as GMOs. Global climate change and loss of biodiversity are great problems, and it is believed that the recent increase in natural calamities is directly correlated to these changes. The world is economically developed but has not achieved sustainable development. Humans have become a serious threat to their own future well-being and perhaps even survival in the 21st century. Following the 2008 economic collapse, Iceland has rebuilt a powerful green economy, one that sustains close to 100% of all energy usage throughout the entire country. Granted, the population is just over 300,000 people on the island, it's still a very impressive role to carry as an entire country. Iceland is a global leader in renewable energy, supplying approximately 80% of its energy demand from renewable resources. The country has abundant geothermal and hydroelectric resources that are used for heating and electricity generation respectively. In fact, the only fossil fuels burnt in Iceland is the gasoline which is used to power everyone's vehicles. Climate change is already devastating the millions of lives across our planet. How we address these issues will be a test of our commitment, not only to the values of the United Nations, but to our entire planet. Unfortunately, the poorest in developing countries tend to reap the effects the hardest, as well as those who are least responsible for causing climate change, such as Iceland. Welfare for the Future is an example of strategic framework on a national level and is the perspective of the Icelandic government on sustainable development in Iceland to the year 2020. Our challenge is to find a way to safeguard the world's ecosystems while raising the level of development and fostering economic growth. We should not have to make choices between development and a clean environment. If we reduce our dependency on fossil energy sources and substantially expand the share of renewables in the world energy demand, we could have both cleaner environment and development.